so troubling to me is to know that my neighbors could see the world in such a different place, a different way,
Yeah.
and that everything that I go through in this country and that I watch happen had no relevance to a majority of Americans.
Mhm.
That's what was so challenging.
Right, right. And when I was on TikTok actively for the last year, and when the election happened and the black creators just took their giant step back and said, half of you, doesn't matter which half, we're gonna go, we're gonna go circle the wagons because that's what we need to do. You guys need to figure out how to make community and how to figure this out on your own. And for the first time, we are we are it was the first time after this election that I stepped outside of my door and I saw white women as potential enemies. That I went, wow. Because I don't know, were you the 47 or the 52%, right? And it doesn't take very long talking to them to find out, but oh my
No, it
gosh.
doesn't.
So tell me about the industry that you're in and how maybe you can explain to us what coding is. I hear that term and I don't really understand it, but I need to understand it. How
Sure.
and we kind of call it masking for neurodivergence, but
Mhm.
tell us more about that, would you? And about your
Okay.
experience coming in your industry.
So, obviously, as you know, Kim, my name is Tracy Christian, and I have two successful businesses that I'm the founder and the head of. One is a talent agency called TCA, MGMT, and I've been working in the entertainment industry for a little over 25 years. And when I started in the business, I didn't know anything. I started off as kind of a like receptionist assistant and worked my way up over the years. So now I represent actors, writers, directors for work in film, the theater, and television.
Mhm.
And so we're, respected boutique agency. And then the flip side is during the pandemic, I started a clothing line called Sante Grace, which is very near and dear to my heart for a number of reasons we can discuss. But I design plus size luxury clothing. So I design the clothes, I have them manufactured right here in Los Angeles. And
Mhm.
then we sell by virtue of e-com, and we're in a few stores around the country. And so both of those experiences have been really enlightening, really, really enlightening. I thought I was just selling clothes, but turns out I'm being a revolutionary. I didn't know.
And what does the
So,
intersection look like for you?
well, I guess it's a little bit about marginalized groups.
Okay.
And on the plus size part, I didn't realize how marginalized, like because I live in that space. I'm a plus size woman. So, and I've always been a person who's bigger than other people. So I never got to step out of that circle and kind of see how the other side lives until I started creating the clothes. But so you were asking me about code switching, coding.
Yes, yes. Uh-huh. What does that mean to you?
So amongst ourselves, most African American people, well, I mean, we speak English, but we have our own, dare I say, like a patois,
Mhm.
and that we speak.
Mhm.
And if you had middle class parents or above, they let you know that you should not speak that patois in the presence of someone who's not African American. Not,
Oh,
no, actually, not even in the presence of someone who's not African American, in the presence of white people.
oh,
Because even this the language, the accent, or whatever you'd like to call it, was never respected as a patois. It translated to white ears as not educated, undesirable, lower class. And it
Mhm,
isn't at all. It's
mhm,
just another way of communicating.
mhm,
So my parents, and it wasn't like they were strict or anything, but without anyone ever saying it to you, you became very conscious of when I'm with my friends and relatives,
mhm,
and even another Black person just standing in line, I, c-
mhm.
I can speak one way. But as
Uh-huh.
soon as someone other comes around, I speak the King's English with the King's accent. And the goal, again, no one ever said this, but we
Yeah,
got the message loud and clear. If
yeah,
you're on the phone, and all of this, the Zooming stuff is pretty new, and my parents could have never predicted that we would be seeing each other as much as we do when we speak. But
right.
the goal was when someone sees your resume, they shouldn't
Mhm,
know by virtue of your name whether you're
mhm,
Black or white. When they speak
mhm.
with you on the phone, they should know if you're Black or white. Frankly, you would be better off if they thought that you were white.
Mhm, mhm.
So my name is not Shanika Johnson. My
Uh-huh,
name is Tracy Christian.
uh-huh. Okay.
And my father, one day, we were talking about my name. I said, how'd you guys come up with Tracy? There are no Tracys in the family. And Tracy. And he said, I wanted to give you a name where people didn't know whether you were a boy or girl or Black or white,
Wow.
because I wanted to give you options. It's going to
Mm,
be hard enough for you to get the gig once you show up, but at least I could make sure by virtue of your name, you still got the interview. So,
okay.
so that gives you a bird's eye view of how premeditated middle
Mhm,
class, upper middle class Black parents had to be
mhm,
to help their kids succeed.
mhm. Right. Even more so than the "and if you get pulled over, here's how you behave."
Right. So
You
that's what
should.
the code switching is for
Oh,
us. And
oh,
I had to code switch because amongst certain sets of Black people, if I sounded like this all the time,
uh-huh.
that didn't work,
Uh-huh.
right?
Yeah.
I think their attitude was, you know how to code switch, you know how to speak my language, and your refusal to do so
Oh,
won't be, right? It's a
right.
bit like going to France and not trying to learn any French.
Okay. All right.
It's it's showing a bit of disrespect.
Mhm,
But I needed this voice, this vocabulary to succeed in corporate America. I
mhm,
needed, whites, whether they were younger than me
mhm,
or older than me, to feel comfortable, to
mhm.
feel like I had the same or a similar history so that they would promote me. Now, and in the entertainment industry, that's, on the executive side, what it's all about. Because what happens, the way you get ahead in my job is someone will hire you as an assistant. And the only way you get the assistant job is that agent has to feel like, oh, this person
Mhm.
has a similar background to me. I can trust this person. We have the same, you're right? We have the same likes and dislikes, the same morals. If I'm
Right.
cheating on my wife, my assistant knows how not to leave crumbs, for my family. All of this ridiculous stuff. But
Yeah.
a big part of it is language. You
Mhm,
didn't, there were crazy things like I hear white executives not want to hire Black men in particular because assistants are treated really poorly, very badly. And
okay.
they were afraid of Black men. They thought, if I throw a script at this person, at
Oh,
the white kid, the white kid's gonna duck, the Black guy's gonna stand up and punch me in my face. Now, but the point is, you shouldn't be throwing a script at anyone, right? You miss that. You shouldn't be throwing a script at anyone.
That's right. Yeah.
But yeah, they needed to know that I was capable, but not a threat, and
Oh.
that I understood. It was more important that I understood their culture than understanding mine.
Mm-hmm.
So that's
Right.
code switching.
And that's what waiting to exhale is for our Black coworkers, is that they're on guard until until you step into your space where you can be and
For
in your.
example, like right now, I'm trying to think, okay, if you were a Black woman, how would I speak to you? And
Right.
my brain is so programmed and conditioned, I can't do it.
Oh, okay.
I can't even,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
The
And
eyes saw your
that
face,
is a perfect
switched into,
example of how racism hurts us all, because we are all steeped in this systemic racism that says, don't talk, don't trust, don't feel, but
don't trust.
especially don't
Yes,
trust. Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
And so that's fascinating. Your and
My
my lives intersect in several ways. Go ahead.
my best friend, one of my very best friends, happens to be Jewish. And when the George Floyd verdicts were, coming down, that whole thing was happening. Um, she said, we were talking about it, and she said, there are so many things I've always wanted to discuss with you, but I didn't have the vocabulary, and I was so afraid of making a mistake and upsetting you or coming off the wrong way. So I would just avoid those subjects altogether, or jokes that I wanted to tell or that I thought were funny or whatever. And I said, so that's how we unmask and undo racism. Tell the joke, make the mistake.
Hmm.
I love you. I'm not going to stop being your friend
Right.
because you offended me.
Uh-huh.
Who knows if I find the joke offensive or not, but make the mistake. And then we have a bridge that we can build something on and a
Mhm.
conversation that we can have. But when we're both kind of tiptoeing around one another and just discussing safe subjects,
Right.
we'll never have a very deep relationship.
Right. And make the mistake. I've been following. I work with Dr. Nikki Lanier, who is a Black creator, not just a creator. She's got a business and all the things for the Rare Woman Collective, and
Mm.
she over a year ago said, we are going to work with with white women to turn this systemic racism, white women leaders. And it got my attention. I mean, it was a have to be there, 4 days of intensive whatever. But what was really fascinating was I then opened myself up to Black creators across the board. And I have this podcast was born to keep me accountable, to keep me from going back into my white bubble when it got inconvenient or uncomfortable truths. And by showing up with a different voice every single week, we are on season 2. I've done 35 episodes. I am a different woman today than I was a year ago. But I've got over 60 years steeped in this privilege that that because we intersect, because I'm a woman and because I have been obese my entire life until the magic of GLP-1s, right? And so I always aligned my entire life. I always aligned
Mm.
with the marginalized voices. But in my experience in my home, the only time that color got brought up was when I tried to bring a friend home from the wrong side of the tracks, or when I found a
Hmm.
playmate on vacation, or because that's just always because I identify. But I assumed that that meant that you would identify with me as a safe and trusted source. And it wasn't until the bear conversation and the black women, we moved past the bear and said, would you rather be in a conference room with a white man or a white woman? And they said a white man. And I was so defensive. What do you mean? How can I be threatening? They're the enemy. I'm not the enemy. And I sat back and closed my mouth and listened and learned. Listened
Mm,
and learned. And I'm about to go to Georgia to do some consulting work, and I've never taken my culture and communication work into an integrated facility before, and I can tell you I will never walk in a conference room the same way again, assuming anything about anybody. Um, other than I just keep learning. What I would love most of all, and I don't know how to do it or how to model it or how to even talk about doing it. So we probably just should, because one of the things we do at One Voice Evolving is pull back the curtain of what's going on, is to say, how would you, if you and I, because here we are being perfectly ourselves in our perfect corporate structure, if we were going to pull it back, one of the things I've learned recently is that white women are so afraid of getting called out. And some of the black creators I follow said, why? What, because in their culture, their communities, they call
mm,
each other out. And get it and get over with. And we have multiracial children and grandchildren. So I've spent some time in their homes, and very different vibe. But honestly, I was 65 before I ever spent the night in anything but a white household. So how would you ever know that there was a difference when the doors closed there versus when the doors closed here? There's a difference in there's a difference in music, there's a difference in fragrance, there's a difference in delivery, there's a difference in interpersonal communications, significant difference
mhm.
that uh, we're we white women are so indoctrinated to be quiet and don't make waves, that to ask us over 40 to use our voices might be the first time anybody ever gave us permission to say what we really thought. That's the truth. So, how do you do that?
First of all, I've just got to thank you for even building this podcast. You said you built it to keep yourself accountable, but it was, it almost brought me to tears that someone was actually so progressive and so open and just doing this kind of work. Like, this is a fantasy, and you almost don't trust it.
Right. Yeah.
Uh, yeah, I've never, I've read about people like you, but I've never met, a white American woman that was this
Okay.
open and working toward egalitarian relationships and not doing this thing where we're all just alike. No, we're all totally different, different
Yes.
cultures, and we respect people the way they are, where the way they show up, not the way
Mhm.
we want them to be. You know,
Yes.
um, it's
Yeah.
it's awe-inspiring, and I thank you. I thank you. And I wonder who I would have become if I'd had even one teacher that was like you, or, someone in my life like you earlier on.
If you could imagine that we could be best friends, and frankly, we could. I just have a draw to you. But what do you wish I knew? What would you advise or tell me, or what do you wish you could say to the white woman in the conference room that you hold back, that could help that could help us who really want to learn and be better, but I'm not looking for performative things. I'm looking for a first order change that I just wouldn't even know to look for or think about.
See me as more than black.
Yes. Yeah.
Because there are those women in the corporate structure, they want me to be that sassy, smart talking, quippy, and I'm that person sometimes, and I can be that person, but that's a character that I inhabit so that you feel safe and you know how to deal with me.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah.
You feel like I'm cool.
Mhm.
You
Yes.
feel,
So you
yeah,
can
you
say
feel like I'm cool.
it's so interesting. When I was in Louisville at the Rare Woman Collective Live in November 2023 with Dr. Lanier, she had her son, who was 25, come up on stage, a young black man. And he was looking at 150 white women just like me who were there to say, how do we
There's
engage?
150 of you?
150 in a room. Oh, honey, if you haven't heard I'm going to send you the link to Dr. Lanier because she works with black women and with white women, but in separate parts of this because she has an imperative to solve this problem in 20 years. So, but his conversation, first of all, he was blown away. I saw it in your eyes too, that these women really wanted to do this. Like these white women really want to do this. And he said, you're really like jumping into the deep end of the pool. And he said, and the thing is you jump in thinking the water's going to be fine, and you come up with a mouthful of mud. And he said, and so he explained some of the things that he does. His mother had said that um, they'd gone to an event or something, and she felt so safe and so wonderful, and it was so beautiful. And so she had the experience of her life. And he said, and I'm really happy that she had that. But I
Mm.
was checking the perimeters. I was checking who was around and what they were doing. And he talked about how he doesn't wear his hair the same when he's going into that environment, and how he makes eye contact and smiles and nods so people know that he's friendly. And now if he sees one other black person in the room, he said they make eye contact and nod. They make eye contact and nod just so they know if anything goes down here, I got you.
Oh, okay, Kim, so do you
Gives
know
me
that we all do
chills.
that?
No, but it gave me chills because I thought, oh my God, this young man at 25, and that's when I went down. That's part of what got me, because I'm a researcher. We're talking generational trauma. You didn't learn that from your educated necessarily parents or grandparents, but
No.
but this is in your DNA, baby. This trauma, because everything he was describing was a trauma response. And when I realized he lives in a trauma response, now take that with the intersection of women and women's bodies. Talk to me.
So I had an assistant named Jenica who was from Wisconsin, blonde, like a towhead blonde, little cute little thing. And I took her with me to the Cannes Film Festival.
Okay.
And Jenica is wonderful. Um, so we had a very detailed schedule. We're going to this event, this place, blah blah blah. And the French. So you could be on whatever list you're supposed to be on, but there's so much bureaucracy. If the door guy doesn't like what you're wearing, or you don't look the part, or whatever, you won't be able to get in. And then the other part of our job is, yeah, there's parties and events we're not on the list, and we got to kind of get to the door and push ourselves in. So I forget where we were. Martin Scorsese or someone was having like a yacht party or something, and I wanted to go to that. So we got dressed and we showed up, and I said, Jenica, let me know if there's any black security you see. And she looked at me and said, okay. And of course, found some black security guards, and he let me in. Jenica figured, so Jenica figured, oh, well, he's just maybe like helping another Black person out. That's not, you know, big deal. Okay, that was nice of him. But then she noticed every place we went, and, France has a healthy selection of, Blacks, whether they're from America or whatever, but we would do the I thing. We would kind of note one another. And whether it didn't matter how famous or not famous the person was, we did this acknowledgement thing. And she goes, "What are you guys doing? Is there a secret code?" And I said, "Yeah, that's what we do." And I said, Sometimes well-to-do Africans will not acknowledge you. Brits at a certain level will not acknowledge you. There, color games, amongst our tribe, people won't acknowledge you, but we do a thing where I see you. I see
Yeah.
you. And as long as it's not going to get you fired or anything and you look the part,
Mhm.
usually if they can help you, another Black person can help another, you will.
Mhm.
You absolutely will. And she said, "That's great. White people don't do that. We don't have any, there's
I
no
don't even
like,"
make eye contact. I walk
she's
right
like,
by.
"There's no like, you're German, I'm German." Let me let do it. And I said, "We definitely do that." I said, "I think it comes from a place where long ago we probably had to protect one another, or, if something was going to happen, you needed to know, look, I last saw him here at 8 o'clock because people did just disappear." And I said, particularly Black women know to do it with Black men
Tell
because
me.
there are a lot of places that I can go with no problem
Mhm.
that Black men are going to have a problem. Or if there's a Black man and
Yeah.
there's a lot of white women around, I will make sure to stay in that space
Okay.
because I know if he's just doing his job, especially if he's security, it's very
Mhm.
easy for someone to say that he was unduly aggressive or to
Mhm.
confuse, you know, there are challenges there. And you want to have a voice to say, "No, that's not
Mhm.
what happened,"
Yeah.
especially if the person sounds like me,
Yeah. There you go.
because otherwise he's just going to be considered to be automatically guilty.
Right. Right. So there's a lot of protection, but there's communal knowledge of that protection. So the
Completely. And
yeah.
again, no one ever said to do it. I think I probably just grew up. I saw my grandmother do it and my
Yeah.
father, and it's considered rude not to acknowledge the person.
Okay. Okay.
And it's just a quick little eye thing.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah.
And so when you're in a room with mixed company, how would you feel if a white woman did that to you? Look at So if any of our listeners get this idea that, "Oh, I'm gonna try that. It's the blue bracelet of 2025." You wanna say, "Oh,
No,
honey,
that's just for
don't do
us.
it."
Don't do that.
Okay.
Don't do that. Um, No, yeah, don't do that. I would assume, I would have to assume that she's either in a mixed relationship or
I
she grew up around a lot of Black people, but still she should know, don't do that.
Your facial expressions are priceless. They are priceless. They are. It's like, "Yeah, tell us what you really think. Never mind, I see it. I see it all."
Yes.
Good.
See it all
Yeah,
over.
I
Yeah, she
like
should
that.
not, under no circumstances, should she do that.
Yeah. Earlier, when you were talking about your plus size, clothing and that kind of thing, and I can't remember now what you said, maybe you'll remember. It was talking about the way you move in the world, because when you said it, I thought that, as I've lost weight, I am much more of a threat. That's what I
Yes.
say, yeah. So
Yes.
so I went through I went through all of my divorces and career changes and all the things I did in about 100-pound heavier body. And now that I'm in my 60s, I'm hoping that my age is going to offset some of the other stuff. But oh my God, the angst from white women. When I was heavy, then I could be trusted around their men.
Yes, you weren't a sexual threat.
I wasn't, yes, and I wasn't competition. They could be the skinny one, and I was the fat, jolly one, and it was all fine. And as that has shifted, the shift of male respect and interaction is really noticeable, which is enough to make anybody mad. And but women, that 52% is probably more like 70 because we're all about this body thing. Yeah, I mean, not in the voting part, but in the interacting, my ability to have
Interesting.
conversation. So this, when I go to Georgia, is the first time I'm doing this work in this body. This is a whole new experience in this head and this body. And and I'm already not perceived as safe by the black women in the room. And I don't know, black men maybe too. What happens then when you take that intersexuality with a not plus size body? What would you imagine?
I, first of all, I just think about how many the how we collect data and interviewing people, and I've never actually thought about, oh, is the interviewer plus size or not, and how that would change someone's response to the
Hmm.
questions they're asking.
Right. Yeah,
That's that's interesting work
it is. And their comfort level. And
for
their comfort.
sure.
Yeah.
For sure. I don't know. I mean, I really don't know. The
Well,
thing that I do perceive is when I'm bigger, and I'm big now, I can feel the acceptance. I can feel that because, and I know it's because I'm not a sexual threat. I'm just supposed to be fun and trustworthy and smart and all of that. You don't have to worry about Tracy. And thinner, shapely Tracy is more of a problem and is less accepted. But when I talk to people, like, do you think fat people aren't having sex? Go to the airport. All of these people are coupled up. Okay? These 200-pound, 250, 300-pound bodies, none of them are single. Okay? None of them are single.
that's
So
not
whatever,
fun.
whatever notions we have are not accurate.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well,
I don't know. You're going to be in an interesting place, and I do want to know when you go to Georgia what happens.
oh, I'm really thinking. So I got off of all things Meta and TikTok after the last 24 hours. I'm like, I'm not going back there either. I just don't need any extra drama in my world right now. Um, but I'm over on Substack and I do podcasts and I do these little clips, and I'm really feeling like I'm going to document this experience in real time. I don't know what that's going to look like or how it's going to come out, but because people need to see, just like they need to see you and I having a conversation that's not quite as staid as it would be in a conference room. They need to see what a lifetime of privilege intentionally set aside for the good of all of us with understanding and compassion and comprehension, um, how that impacts, how that changes things, because I can't imagine. I have spent most of my life oblivious, and I was one of those, oh, I don't see color. Well, guess
Right.
what? I have a merch line now, and it's, let's see if I can get it on there to show. Ooh, nope, it doesn't want to. No, it's not gonna. It's because I've got blur back on my screen. There you go. Colorblind is still blind.
That
And
is genius.
yeah. Yeah, now I just got to figure out how to get somebody to merchandise. See, I got to hear too. And I love it so much because I said that to somebody in a podcast, and my son, who does graphics on the side, created the graphic. And so I got it trademarked and said, all right, then this is something. It's something. But it again, front of mind that says, we always thought it was better not to notice race. We have a certain age, we're raised that way. And the reality is, um, how can you not? That's disingenuous.
It is, and I want you to see me as a Black person, but just not
Yes.
to minimize what that means.
Right. And not to assume what that means.
And not to assume, right? I want to bring you into my culture and have you experience,
Wouldn't that be
all of
fun?
our foods and our dances and customs and crazy names and all the rich, fun stuff that for me it means to be Black, the non-scary stuff, because we have a lot of
Yeah.
fun over here. And I want to
There was a lot of
see,
joy.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I want to know, do you guys have similar thing? Are there things that are,
And we're
similar in your
boring as
culture?
hell.
And
We're boring as hell. We overschedule and we overthink it and we overfunction until people are like, what are your hobbies? I don't have a hobby. I don't have time for a hobby. I don't have time to be sick and I don't have time for a hobby.
no, I want that. I want to be, kind of culturally transparent. So
Yeah.
I just don't want to be, a name on a slate. I'm happy being Black. I want somebody to see that I'm Black.
Mhm.
But like you said, but not to assume that that means one thing or another.
Right. Or and not to hear, I mean, so if somebody comes into your home and sees you in your home environment, you want them to be loving you the same as before when they only knew you from from an after work at the bar situation, right? Is that realistic? I mean, is
I
it
think
realistic
so. I would think
to get
that I would
kombucha?
hope that the more you get to learn about me, the more you could love me, that it
Oh yeah.
should lessen the distance between us.
Yeah. Yeah. I would think so. I would think so. So you were talking in your notes for this session about many of us are walking around in a dream state. This is what you wrote. Unaware of how our actions affect our fellow man. The BLM and the pandemic were a wake-up call for me and how I've been unintentionally participating.
So, like I said, I have educated parents who made very conscious choices about how I was educated, where I was educated, how I spoke, how I dress, how I wore my hair. Now, my parents, proud Black people, they again never ever said to me, never, don't wear braids.
Mhm.
Um, but I grew up feeling like braids could be beautiful, but they were unprofessional.
Okay. All right. Because the standard is white straight hair.
Yes. So
Okay.
I grew up with straight hair. And you could wear braids if you were a student, but
Mm-hmm.
once you became a serious person and you were an adult, you would have straightened hair. And you, for God's sakes, you definitely wouldn't bleach it. A person with my skin tone and blonde hair, that was, so déclassé. You can't even, I couldn't even imagine that. But that was very clearly communicated to me and something that I had to work out for myself. So when I was in ninth grade, I had a white teacher, and it happens like this a lot. Kent Mall. Can you get a whiter name than that? A surfer from Seal Beach in
Oh,
Southern California. And he demanded that I read the autobiography of Malcolm X.
okay.
Now, in my mind, I mean, I knew a little bit about Malcolm X, but certainly Malcolm X wasn't taught in any school. And I thought, okay, so he's involved with the Nation of Islam and they're kind of
Mhm.
bad guys. And why do I need but I read that book and it opened up my mind and made me ask questions about myself, my internal racism. Like,
Mm,
why did I think that braids were a bad thing? Why was straight hair and I would say to myself, I don't think straight hair is better than, braided hair or kinky hair. It's just more versatile. It's just faster, right? That's
mm,
the coding that I put over it. But when I really was honest with myself, it was straight hair makes my life easier with white people.
yeah.
Straight hair is, within the Black community
Mhm,
for a long time, the darker you were, the kinkier your hair was, the more
mhm,
negative that was. The blacker you are, no matter,
mhm,
all the signs that we held up, we ourselves didn't like dark skin and kinky hair and full lips and a wide nose.
mhm,
And we would do everything to anglicize or
mhm.
to
That's
make
it.
ourselves look whiter, to flatten
Mhm,
our bottoms, to have less curvy bodies,
mhm,
all of that.
mhm.
And when I read that and really started questioning why I did certain things, you can't help but change,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know? So, but the statement that I was talking about was again in entertainment.
Mhm,
Look, and I don't think it's just because I'm Black, because I'm sure everyone has swallowed a little sand to get where they want to go. But how many jokes I listened to that were not funny that I
right,
really wanted to say, that's beneath you or whatever,
right.
but I kept my mouth shut. How many
Mhm,
people who thought they were, who they didn't see color and they were like the biggest racists that, there ever was. Um, but because I didn't say anything, now I feel like I was complicit in the
mhm,
racism in that place. Like until someone stands up and says, you're wrong, or
mhm,
just be a human and say that hurt my feelings, or that's inappropriate, or that's unprofessional. If you allow it to happen, it's going to continue.
mhm.
And I allowed it to happen,
Right, yeah.
you know? I
And then
was
after you swallow it so long, you finally it pops out, and then the angry black woman trope comes in.
exactly. I remember, and now I grew up in San Francisco, a very liberal place. And so I thought I was this liberal, hip chick, good. And I remember telling actors who would come into my office and I would be able to kind of disarm them and they would confess to me that they're gay. And I'd say, "Yeah, I know. I was going to tell you, you got to butch it up a little bit. You came in here, you know, a little floaty." Now, not only is that like I don't know if it's a Title 6 or a Title 7
Right.
I'm not hiring them, so it's not a violation. But,
Uh,
like, can you imagine the nerve of me? And
yeah,
I thought I was doing them a favor,
yeah, yeah.
right? So there's so many things that I've had to learn to question about myself,
Mhm. Yeah.
about yeah, just about what I allow to happen around me.
Mhm, mhm. Right.
Oh, that period, that BLM movement,
Mhm.
and in Hollywood, where we try to the political correctness is, all over the place. I got calls from like all these white executives and other white agents who are friends that I do business with, and they'd say, like, I just got out of this workshop that, the company had us. Have I
Oh,
ever
yeah.
said anything that was blah blah blah, that made you uncomfortable or you felt was racist or whatever? And I would say no to those people. I would put them at ease so that
Yeah.
right away they would know you're not one of the bad ones. You're fine. We like you. And I didn't take the moment to have like meaningful engagement. And to tell you the truth, many of them had said something, but it's so common, I'd forgotten it. Like,
Right.
if you think that I can walk around with every, racist joke I've ever heard.
Yeah.
Who can live like that? You got to hear it, compartmentalize it, like shrink it down as small
Yeah.
as you can, and then put it somewhere else, because otherwise you'd never be able to do your job.
And it's a survival skill. And I think, I think that when that was happening, I've heard from several Black women who I've interviewed on these podcasts about the pandemic and how suddenly they were getting calls from all of their white friends who were, how can we help and what can we do and what will you teach us and all of that until it was exhausting in itself, right? And as soon as Black Lives Matter passed, it's kind of like DEI. As soon as it's not
Yes.
required anymore, then we're not going
Yes.
to check that box anymore. And had you said, been honest and transparent in those conversations, you don't know where that would have landed you a year later.
Exactly. We
Yeah.
did not trust it at all. We're like, we will not be fooled again. You will not
Yeah.
get me to open up,
Yeah.
and then this movement passes on, and you know, now I'm
Hmm.
isolated.
Yeah. 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 So it's a survival skill as well. Fascinating. Season two for us is about resilience.
Mm.
And I want our viewers to know where to find more of you and where to find your fashions and who your fashions are for. So this is your time, your opportunity to do your plug. But then I want to wrap it with some, what do you think, whatever is on your heart to say about resilience or to bring to the table about that?
I I identify as a Christian,
Mhm.
and you know, I thank God for you.
Oh,
I
oh,
didn't
that.
know I am 50 years old, and I never dreamed that you existed.
Mm,
And to know that you do gives me so much hope for our country and for the world
mm,
and for humanity, frankly.
mm,
All of us, we spend our times, we watch the news, watching man's inhumanity to man. And and I just sit here and experiencing you. Definitely, I'm not over it. You're like a unicorn that I've sighted. I think, okay, there's one, there must be 150 she couldn't have
There's
counted, actually.
3,000 in the Facebook Rare Woman Collective. 3,000 women. Yeah. Yeah, we're here. Little army. Yeah.
It's beautiful. What you're doing is beautiful. I feel privileged to have met you. Um, I want to know more about, as a Black woman, what can I do to be more inclusive and to create safe spaces for women like yourself who are doing the work.
Mhm.
Uh, yeah, yeah,
When this is over, I'll send you the contact information for Dr. Lanier because
wonderful.
you have many things in common, the two of you. Yes. Yeah. And it'd be wonderful.
Yeah, you're a jewel.
Thank you. So tell us, do you want us to be able to find you online or do you want to be anonymous? Your choice.
No, you can find me online. So as I mentioned, I have a beautiful clothing line called Sante Grace, and you can find us on IG at Sante Grace, or at our website at santegrace.com, or who knows what will happen with old Tickety Talk, but we're
Yeah.
on TikTok as well at Sante Grace Ventement. So,
Okay. Okay. And what kind of fashions do you do? I see. I mean,
so,
I looked at it and you are incredibly creative, which
oh,
when
thank
you
you.
said you couldn't make your hair blonde or anything because with your skin tone, and I thought that's got to be really hard for somebody who is as creative as you are to be coloring inside of those lines. That would be hard.
No, I'm inspired by music, movies, and the '70s. So when I create something, it starts from a place of where do we go? What do we got to do? Like when I look at my life, and there were always outfits that I had to create because they didn't exist for the places that I wanted to go. So in my life, I get to go to Cannes and it's a lot of fun. But where do you find a size 20 dress that's appropriate for Cannes? There isn't one. So I made a few. Or I get to go to the Academy Awards. Where do you find a size 20 dress? And it's not like we just have ball gowns, but I have a big, wonderful life that's everything from, you know, building my koi pond in the back of my house to going to something like the Oscars and everything in between. And you need clothes to do it. And I don't want to look like everyone else. So I would create looks that fit my lifestyle. And that's what Sante Grace is. So it's just about options. You might go to the website and women might say, oh, this is a little too bright for me. But inevitably, there's something there. There's, dresses to wear to church that don't look like Mother of the Bride. There's
Right.
if you have a chance to go out dancing, things that will make you feel smart and sexy and make sense, and I kind of take into account too what plus size bodies needs. Like a lot
Mhm.
of us, our ankles might be a little thicker than we want to admit. So I take care of that. Or, we want to wear a strapless dress, but a lot of us are pretty well endowed and there's compensation for that. So it's also pretty smart fashion. It's not, I didn't just make an outfit.
Mhm.
The other thing to know is we use luxury fabric. So most of the textiles are silks, rare linens,
Mm.
um, hand tooled leathers. Like if you order one of our leather jackets, they're handmade, and the my leather designer will sign his name and endorse it to you. But just the fun that my girlfriends who are smaller size have been able to experience. We go into a fancy store and they get a certain level of service
Mhm.
and quality, and I wanted that for women who are my size. So that's what I created, and we go from size 1X, like a size 14, all the way up to a 5X, which is probably about a size 30. So a
Mhm.
little something there for everyone.
That's wonderful. I love that. Thank you.